Hello and welcome to the Dada Show, coming to you straight from the Boma Hotel here in Nairobi. I'm your host, Ashiko Mbune. The Dada Show is highly interactive. It focuses on issues by women, for women, and being discussed by women, of course. We are on the second part of a two-part series focusing on gender-based violence. Today's focus is on sexual harassment at the workplace. As usual, let's keep the conversation going on our social media platforms at Dada's KBC. We always welcome any feedback, questions, comments that you may actually have. So sexual harassment in the workplace is a conversation that is awkward for both the employer and the employees, with most people opting to stay in silence in situations where they should have actually spoken up. This is primarily based because of the myths and the misconceptions around the topic. A conversational nurturing environment is something that needs to be encouraged in every organization. So today I'm joined by a panel of industry experts par excellence, who are going to shine some light on these very contentious issues and to see if we can be able to find a solution to this overwhelming scourge. So joining me today to discuss this contentious issue is a panel of lovely ladies, industry experts par excellence. On my farthest left, we have Madam Judy Kaberia. She is the Executive Director of AMWIC, which is the Association of Media Women in Kenya. And this is an association that is leading the Kenya media sector working group in efforts to address sexual harassment in this industry. Second, we have Madam Rachel Ombaka. She's been described as the woman's woman, an IT graduate come journalist. She uses her phone to her voice. She uses her voice to amplify our challenges and also our achievements. Karibu sana. Next to me is no stranger to the Dada's panel, and it is Mwavishi, and she's an advocate from FIDA. I'd also like to welcome my most abled and pleasant audience, who we'll be engaging with a little bit later. Before we move on, let's watch a feature on sexual harassment at the workplace.
Sexual harassment at workplace continues to be a sensitive topic taking place behind closed doors. The inappropriate behavior mostly happens to the junior employees by their seniors in promise of some benefit at workplace.
You find yourself, you're very, like you have the potential, you have the skill, you have the experience and everything, but women find themselves being put backwards in certain positions. You can't get a promotion because like your fellow workers are like, no, the fact that you want a promotion, you have to talk to the boss very well, and talking to the boss very well is not even talking, like literally talking. It's about how much you're going to impress them. You find that the boss is asking you out for dinners and lunch in order for, like, you have to be there to impress them, so in order to get a promotion.
First of all, it's not right. You're not supposed to be harassed so that you get advances and to kupandishwa cheo. Yeah. And I think the government should have a law about it, so that at least hata ukienda kwa police station, you have at least something unaweza simamia. You have ground unaweza simamia.
80% of women suffer from verbal and sexual harassment at least once in their lifetime. However, most cases go unreported, as these cases are hushed, especially if they involve a high-profile personality. Although it is a wide demographic of people who go through sexual harassment, most survivors are scared to report the ordeal because of fear of the issue being trivialized by the organization they work in, which can result to hostility towards the survivor.
Sometimes women, because of like fear of judgment, you find women, they keep it on the low. they're not coming out to say what is happening. Maybe you are searching for a job and you probably wanted that job so much, and maybe you've been on the road for long, you've been walking and for long, and then suddenly you find that your dream career is there, and you're called for the interview, and the boss is there trying to make certain approaches. They can't directly give you the opportunity, but they want you to go through the back door. Sometimes women find themselves pushing themselves backward so that they get the opportunity. You find women are in fear. It's not the right thing, and I feel like it's something that it should not be there. We should not be afraid to be judged because we come out saying that I went to this and this interview to the boss and they did this to me in order for me to get that job. So I feel like it's not the right thing. It should not be there. But society has made us feel like it's something wrong, and also like there's normalization. People have normalized the fact that in order to get something you have to bribe someone, you have to do this in order to be there, to reach at that point.
Under the Sexual Offences Act in employment law, a person may be found guilty of sexual harassment if any person who, being in a position of authority or holding a public office, persistently makes any sexual advances or requests which he or she knows or has reasonable grounds to know are unwelcome. The penalty of the offence is imprisonment for a term of not less than 3 years or a fine of not less than 100,000 shillings or both.
I'll start with you, Rachel. Many individuals who have experienced sexual harassment, they suffer physically and psychologically, and most of them are forced to take sick leave to avoid the harassment. How were you able to turn the tables to what you are right now?
I changed the status quo. And by that, I mean that there was silence in the place where I worked. And when you say people had to take sick leave, that's part of the silence, because they would go retreat into a corner because they've been violated. They want to protect themselves. But then Rachel started speaking out. We would have meetings in the morning. And I would say, I want to say something. And I would say, this and this has happened, and we cannot condone this. We are a professional organization. How can a section of us be suffering and we continue as if nothing has happened? It's not right. But then something that I also realized is that when I spoke, they did not hear me. And this is because we're in a patriarchal society. When as a woman you speak, you will not be heard. They will hear your high-pitched voice. They will look at what you're wearing. They'll look at your body. So they won't hear the message that you're trying to speak. So what I did is I went to one of the directors. He's a male director who I thought would speak for us as women who were going through sexual harassment. And I was right. When he came to the next meeting and spoke about it, he sort of instilled fear. And the cases stopped because a director had spoken. A man had spoken. And that is why we need to get more men to be our allies, because it feels like it's a women's fight and it's not. Because men also go through sexual harassment. And where I worked, it was both men and women. It wasn't just women. So when I started speaking about it constantly, like not just speaking once and keeping quiet, constantly, and then calling out someone when he does, when he's doing it, you go and stand in between him and the person he's harassing. That is what I mean by changing the status quo. Louder, speaking louder, and then doing something about it. Yeah.
Well said. Thank you so much, Rachel. That must have taken a lot of courage. What do they call it? Balls of steel. Now, on the topic of sexual harassment, there's been various misconceptions. Even as you're explaining about sexual harassment in the workplace, some people will always claim that most cases of alleged sexual harassment involve something physical. Others will deem the sexual harassment as unprofessional conduct. Wakili, kindly expound on us, according to the law, how do you define sexual harassment?
Article 41, that every worker is entitled to work in a reasonable, fair working conditions. That means that you're supposed to it's not supposed to enjoy what you work, but the working conditions are supposed to be favorable for you to be productive in that workplace. In terms of our employment law, we have the sexual harassment, which has been defined in a way that the person who is in power uses that power to advance, to send advances to their junior to make them comply with something. So according to our laws, we have the Employment Act, which has talked about sexual harassment, and we also have the Sexual Offences Act, which has defined what sexual harassment is. To entail what sexual harassment means, the physical has to be there, of course, the touching, the sexual advances in terms of making comments that are sexual to an employee when you're having a conversation with them, the non-verbal. You're blowing them kisses when you're at workplaces, you're writing to notes and all that. So in terms of what our laws define what sexual harassment is, that is the context you have to look into in terms of physical, the verbals and the non-verbals ones. Yes.
Still on you, Mwavishi, does the sexual harassment clauses and the policies that have been put in place in the law, does it cut across both the informal and the formal sector?
Yes, it does, because when you look at the Employment Act, it tries to regulate the private sector. When you look at the Sexual Offences Act, it tries to more lean towards the public sector. But both of them, they are covering both the informal and the informal sector. But what the Employment Act lacked, it says that for you to have a sexual harassment policy, in order to curb this, you have to have more than 20 employees. Remember, in the informal sector, most people employed, they're not through contracts. It's maybe by word of mouth, it's a day-in, day-in income. So that's a challenge that we're facing in terms of law. How does it address the informal sector? Looking at what it has provided, it's more of a contractual and a private public sector. So in terms of the legislation that is there, it's more leaning towards the private sector as opposed to the informal sector.
So thank you very much. Madam Kaberia, while leading the efforts to address sexual harassment in the industry, how would you go about changing the historical culture of an organization, some of this culture that can actually be deemed sexist?
First, I speak as a journalist. I've been a journalist in Kenya for more than 15 years, and I've lived to see the kind of sexual harassment we are talking about when we talk about the media. And here the media is a body that fights for the rights of everybody else apart from its own rights. We've seen sexual violence, sexual harassment within the newsrooms and outside the newsroom. And for the media, it is even worse because sexual harassment is both internal and external. So there's sexual harassment within the media house itself and sexual harassment from the sources. And here we are not talking about any sources. We are talking about powerful sources. We are talking about the duty bearers. We are talking about people with power to even get you sacked. So the animal sexual harassment in the newsroom has been such an eyesore. And a scandal that we hardly speak about. And for the first time, I'm really happy that we started off this conversation. And if I look back at how sad it was to listen to the stories of the women and the men who for a long time braved the screens to talk as if nothing wrong that happened to them. The strong women who go out there in the field to collect news and go back, suffering mentally, afraid and scared because they're going through something that they cannot talk about openly, something that has never been taken seriously within the newsrooms. Myself, I've been a victim of sexual harassment from a news source, and it was so bad it even became physical. But what happens when you go to report to the editors, and again, when you say the editors, you're the managers, we have such a big difference in terms of the gender representation at the decision-making table. So you go to report as a woman that you've been sexually harassed by a source, and then they're like, kwani yo kitu ni sabuni taisha? So just give in, we get the exclusive stories. And so that culture has been deeply enshrined and accepted and normalized. And if you look at the definition of sexual harassment, it's any unwelcome behavior meted on somebody. Now, when you look at the media industry, who are the perpetrators? Most probably, it's the issue of power that she was talking about. That the people at the position of power are the ones that mostly harass the younger people or the newer people. And why is the sexual harassment in the media so common? It is first common because of the high competition for jobs. So a lot of times you see the majority of the victims are interns. When they come, they want to get jobs, they want to get assignments to go and do the usual stories, not the reporting of launch of strategic plan. They want to go and cover the president. They want to go and cover top stories. So in the process of trying to get empowered to get to that level, that's what increases their vulnerability. And I can tell you, sometimes we've just gathered to talk about even story pitching. We've gathered to talk about reporting on ethics. But women and men are opening up, and sometimes they break down into tears. The last time we had an engagement was a young girl working for a Christian radio station. And she said, if I don't get help from here, I don't know what is going to happen, to the extent of like, I'm going to kill myself. And this girl had the text messages from her boss. And he said, since you've been refusing to listen to me, the day I get you, I'll rape you with salt. And the girl read the message and she was breaking down. And that is the saddest part of it. So if I look at why the Kenya Media Sector Working Group mandated the Association of Media Women in Kenya to lead the war against sexual harassment, is because for a long time it's been outspoken. And for the first time we're having a lot of reports. If you look at the latest report by one IFRA, over 57% Kenya is leading with sexual harassment in the media. If we look at the research done by the Media Council of Kenya, over 70% people in the media are vulnerable or are likely to be sexually harassed. So this means it's something that we cannot be silent about.
What would be the appropriate course of action for that? If anyone is watching us right now and they have been experiencing sexual harassment in one way or another, what is the appropriate action? What are the steps that they should take to see, you know, to at least to seek some justice for themselves without compromising their livelihoods? Because I believe that is the fear that most people have. You know, I'll be fired. Yeah.
That is the biggest worry, and that's why a lot of people are not coming out to report sexual harassment in the newsroom, because the lack of that reporting mechanism I'm talking about is, how do you go to report, for example, the managing director to a junior HR to deal with sexual harassment? That is not possible. So a lot of people are not reporting sexual harassment within what is in the media house because of lack of confidentiality and further victimization of the victim. This is the, huyu ni yule alikuwa sexually harassed. Huyu ndiye anashinda hapa kusema watu. So that is one of the biggest challenges. So the first thing that we need to understand is what is sexual harassment. And with this policy, like for example, when you work for international organizations, you are made to read the anti-sexual harassment policy. In your contract, you read, and it's not short. You read, you understand how you can be a perpetrator, how you can be a victim, and in the course that it happens, what should you do? So the first thing we need to start is creating awareness. Let people understand what is it. And when it happens to you, what do you do? Where should you report? And this is exactly what this committee is going to address. We are hoping that we are going to have an independent, whether we are going to call it a tribunal, whether we are going to call it a committee, it's something that the industry is going to agree. But we are going to have an independent place, whether we are going to have a toll-free line, whether it's an independent or a confidential email where they write. But right now, the biggest challenge we have in the media is not having a proper channel of reporting these cases. So after 1 year, this committee, once in place, whether it is going to be housed by the Association of Media Women in Kenya or the MCK, the industry will make that decision. But one of the things that it is going to sort out is the biggest gap of not having a place to report sexual harassment. Secondly is redress. Redress here means, because media houses have assented, they give commitment signatures to the committee, and they are saying they are part of this and they are going to adopt the sexual harassment policy. So once we have the buy-in by the entire media industry, then the media will be obligated or will be under obligation to abide by summons by the committee, such that we can write the letter to the media house and say there are allegations of this person and this person. So either an investigation will be done internally, but the thing is we have to have a way. Is it naming and shaming that we are going to talk about? Is it empowering the victims to follow the case throughout the court? And one of the things that I must say about this ad hoc committee that we have in place, we have the Kenya Media Sector Working Group, but we realized we needed other capacities, like Federation of Women Lawyers in Kenya are part of it. We brought on board Federation of Kenya Employers, because these are issues of labor laws and labor rights. And then we brought IREX because of psychosocial support, because one of the things that happens with sexual harassment, I'll harass you, I intimidate you, and mentally it affects you. Productivity affects you. And you ask how comes we have very few women at the decision-making table in the newsroom? How comes a lot of women are leaving the newsrooms prematurely? One of the major reasons is sexual harassment. So the ripple effect of this animal or this ghost or whatever it is we are calling sexual harassment, the ripple effect is pushing a lot of professionals out of the media prematurely. So we hope this committee, once in place, is going to address some of those gaps that we are seeing now. And I can tell you sometimes it feels helpless because right now we don't have the power to go to a media house and say, we are investigating this sexual harassment. You find very big boundaries which you cannot cross. You're interfering with the internal. This year we've received several cases, so many of them. One was a suicidal case. This lady wanted even to commit suicide. And when you talk about the use of power, this is where I decide the affair is gone. Now I'm not going to renew your contract. These are the things that we're talking about. And people, not so many come out to tell their own stories, but this is a sad state of affairs, but it's so shameful. I didn't expect this to be happening. And one of the things I keep on saying, if someone is a perpetrator, especially in the media, they should be ashamed of themselves, you know? These are the protectors of people's rights. These are the voices of the people. So it's really sad that we, the media, cannot lead by example. And if the media leads by example, we are the most trusted. We can be able to shape the entire of our society to fight sexual harassment.
Thank you so much, Madam Kaberia. On the topic of the perpetrators, what laws have been put in place? First of all, when we look at something like prohibited isolation, what laws have been put in place to be able to, first of all, against the perpetrators, what kind of punishment has been laid up, and how are the victims by law, now we've gone to court, how are the victims, protected against the prohibited isolation? How are their livelihoods protected? Because like Madam Kaberia said, the biggest issue is people are just scared. I don't want to lose my job. I have children I need to help. So we keep quiet. What does the law say about this? Because once we have a clear plan, then more people will speak out knowing that they're protected by the law.
Thank you. As I mentioned on the start, what the law provides when it comes to employment law, it has provided for if you're in an organization and the employees are more than 20, you're obligated to have a sexual harassment policy. The policy is supposed to tell people what exactly is sexual harassment at the workplace, what contains sexual harassment within that organization. If someone faces sexual harassment, what is the procedure? Are they supposed to go, who are they supposed to report to? How is investigation taking place? How are they? In terms of you reporting, how is the case handled? That is the first thing that the law has provided. When it comes to the Sexual Offences Act, it has also provided an avenue that you can report sexual harassment if it has happened to you. What the law has provided in terms of punishment, it's not that severe, but yes, if you are reported for sexual harassment and the law takes its due process, you are liable to be convicted for 3 years. But you see, that does not end. And that is how, like for us now, FIDA, we come in terms of psychosocial support, because as we mentioned, sexual harassment, it deals with you in terms of also trauma, because like if you get messages that you're going to be raped, you're going to be done this, or someone holds you at gunpoint and tells you if you don't do this, this is going to happen to you. As FIDA, what we normally do, we'll give you that legal representation in terms of helping you to continue with this case as you get to the social cycle support, So in terms of what the legislation has provided, the law is very direct in terms of how you report. The employer is obligated to give you that sexual harassment policy. If it fails, you take the next step in terms of criminal to report it as a criminal offense. Yes.
Thank you so much, Wakili. Over to you, Rachel. Before we move on to the questions from the audience, I know that there are so many people, this is out of my own observation, where there are people who are going through sexual harassment. It may not be in this our industry, it could be in various other industries, and they're scared of speaking up. And that is why the forum is so important, so that we can be able to outline and say, yes, the conversation has to start. So if there's somebody at home who's watching right now, and they know that they're being harassed, and true to the word, be it physically, be it verbally, be it the little lewd comments that people make that they always like to sweep under the rug, and yet it is very offensive to women or men, what would your advice be to them?
I think that's an excellent question, because we can speak in these silos, but you need to guide someone who is going to work and needs to know, what do I do? I think that's the essence of these conversations, right? And not everyone is like Rachel. Not everyone will be able to speak up the way I'm talking about speaking up. But speaking from experience, because there were not many people who had the guts to speak out, what I saw worked was that they saw Rachel was speaking, so they would approach Rachel. So I would advise that you seek out someone who is speaking out about it or who can speak on your behalf. Approach them and tell them, this is what is happening to me, what do I do? And in case that person who you have approached doesn't know what to do, this is why we have associations, such as Madam Kaberia's association. Seek out such organizations. You can definitely get help there, because the issue, as I said earlier, is silence. And these perpetrators thrive. They thrive on silence. But once you have told someone who may not be your HR person, who may not be the boss who's supposed to help you, it doesn't matter. Once you tell someone about it and you feel like this person can at least help you to get redress, that is what will start breaking this vice that is a continuous cycle. So for me, the first thing is speak out. Look for someone who you can talk to. Secondly is take care of yourself. Take care of yourself, because most of the times the victims blame themselves. When it happened to me, I blamed myself. I had just come from maternity leave and this man was all over me, so to speak, and I was like, should I have worn this short dress? Should I have sat with my legs crossed? But the issue is not me. The issue is this person who wants to show me he has power. He probably has mental issues, or probably he's struggling at home, and then now he's coming to the newsroom or whatever organization and he's projecting his issues on me. So as women in the workplace, as men in the workplace, when you see a perpetrator, know that this person is the one with the issue, not you. It is never about you. It is the person who is on the wrong, the person who is wronging you. So mentally speaking, when you start from such a place, you will know that you are the one who has the power, not that person who's trying to take it away from you. So that's what I would say. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rachel. I am sure somebody is sitting at home wondering, how do I maneuver the kind of situation I found myself? Finally, Madam Kaberia, being, of course, in a position of power, which we have noticed that many people are using power to actually inflict harassment and inflict pain on their employees. How do you create an environment that is free from sexual harassment? I don't know if that is possible, but what do you put in place in your organization? Let's use this as a benchmark in your organization to ensure that these cases are not going to happen.
One of the things we need to do is that culture change. And culture means we can't do one way. We can't deal with the law alone. Culture to be changed requires a lot of negotiations. One of the things that we are implementing with Femnet is the men-to-men engagement. So we are having charters, county charters. So we have groups of men in the newsroom who are championing against sexual harassment. And these are the men who even go and talk to the perpetrators, you know, in a friendly way. Because if we start being combative, if we start employing the law, it is not going to work. It's an issue of like female genital mutilation. The law alone cannot work. Cultures, the law cannot work. We have to be very comprehensive, very strategic, and very wide in our thinking to ensure that we are employing the right avenues, the right strategies that will appeal. You know, it's about me from a positivity point of view, maybe making you feel ashamed of what you're doing. And most of these people are even people's husbands. You know, these are people's, like their fiancés and all that. So these are not even issues just about harassment itself. It's about the family unit. It's even protecting the family unit. Learn to say no. Learn to speak to somebody like Rachel is saying. You know, have a bit of dignity, and no horizontal climbing won't last for long. So that is one of the biggest impediments that we have. Some of the cases we are going when there was an affair. But even if there's an affair, the use of power, it's abuse of power in the newsroom. So even if someone is having an affair with you and it ends and they decide to demote you, that is still sexual harassment.
Still sexual harassment.
But we don't want to be so reactive. We want to be more preventative. And that's why we are hoping with this committee, it's going to be a deterrence measure, that we just take one case, twende tumpeleke kotini ashikwe, ndio watu wajue this is not a joke. People have to know this is not a joke.
For women that engage in this kind of activity, it is immoral. They lack what we call the values. A well-trained person, I normally say, must have the skill, the knowledge, the values, and the attitude. So when you engage on this, it means that you are not properly trained. We need to have certain points where women can be the protection and support to be established within the national government so that we have protection and support systems for women that can be able to have those kind of things. So that it becomes a national phenomenon that can be dealt with.
But also we are advising people that whenever you've heard anything concerning any lady, please, they should stop stigmatizing and take this serious and look for the right people who can help this situation so that we can help our generation and our ladies in the offices.
First of all, shame on them, and it's not right to do that to a woman because it affects you as a person, as like me as a woman, traumatiziwa. It's not right because it will be a lifetime. It won't be a short term. It will be a long term effect. So it's not right, and shame on you again.
You've given us something to digest, to chew, and to be able to internalize fully. We're going to take a small break, and then we'll come back with the question and answer session right after the break. Welcome back to the Dada's show. Sexual harassment is not just an issue that people in the media industry involved. Sexual harassment cuts across multiple industries, both in the public and the private sector. In my audience, we do have a testimony from Frida, who is going to shine some light on her experience, which cuts across maybe other many experiences that people who are watching may have to tell. Yes, Frida.
Thank you. My name is Frida Okachi, a journalist. My experience 6 years ago, I got an internship opportunity to one of the organization here in Kenya. And jambo la kushangaza ni kwamba wakati nilikuwa nafanya internship yangu, there was this boss. Kila asubuhi ningekutana naye, labda yuko nyuma yangu, and he could use some of the words like unashake mwili vizuri, some of the words zenye ambazo zilikuwa zinaniudhi mno. So then it came to a point nilikuwa najaribu kumavoid sana cause I could go home na feel mbona huyu boss aniambie hivi, mbona nieleze mambo kama haya, cause kama tumekutana naye mahali ambapo hakuna watu sana, angejaribu like zile maneno ambazo zinaudhi sana, kutaka kuguza, but hauna mtu ambaye utaambia, unanyamaza tu, unaenda nyumbani umeudhika, huwezi ambia mtu. Then it came to now after 4 months of internship, nikamaliza internship and kulikuwa na hiyo extension program. I went to this boss, nikamwambia would you mind nijaribu extend my internship? Unfortunately nikaambiwa no. Kuuliza why, nikaambiwa ulikataa mambo yangu, mambo ambayo yaliniudhi sana. Nikakaa nyumbani for 3 months again, nikapata an organization ambapo nilienda kufanya kazi kama volunteer. Again nikaanza kuexperience the same sexual harassment. Unapata boss ndio huyo anakuandikia message ambazo huwezi ambia mtu mwingine. Mazee hizi ndio message ambazo napata kutoka kwa huyu boss, cause utasoma hauwezi mjibu. Then it came to a point nikasema let me speak about it. When I went to that boss nikamwambia I'm not happy with the message that you are sending to me at night. And he was like, I'm a man and what I can tell you lazima unisikize. Wakati nilikataa nikamwambia no, this is not okay. La kushangaza ni kwamba that boss have kunitusi actually, kuniambia you know what, hata kama unakataa kunisikiza, anajua uko na ukimwi, And I felt like, no, this is not okay. Mambo ambayo up to date, sijawahi jua ni nani nitaambia. Ni kwa leo tu ndio nazungumza. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Frida. We applaud you for your bravery. I know it's taken a lot of courage to come up and to speak up, especially in a public forum such as this. Mwavishi, what if Frida were to walk into your office right now, and especially if we're talking about, regardless of her status, here we are talking about derogatory terms. We're talking about this is verbal abuse. And I believe this is one of the biggest misconceptions and the myths that are normally going around. As long as I have not touched you, as long as I have not done this to you, you know, how do you persecute? How do you follow up on something that somebody is making? Because as women, we find ourselves at the receiving end of a lot of objectification. If I walk into an office, someone will not look at Ashiko for what is the content of my head, but for how I look, and they will make it very vocal. They'll be very vocal about it. If I am to decide to prosecute this person for making such remarks that obviously have caused maybe someone like Frida a lot of psychological damage, and she's distraught, what would be the proper channels for me to address it?
Thank you so much for what you've just shared, and I do apologize for what you've encountered. But if she was to walk into my office or to walk at Frida's office, the first thing, we'll take her statement and hear her out. Are you still currently working at the place you're being harassed? If she's still working there, then the first thing is we're supposed to write to them to take action or to follow up if they've taken action to it. Because I'm assuming in that place they have a HR setup or someone that you can talk to. If you're scared to talk to someone, then that is when we come in. And then we address the organization by telling them that this is your employee, this is what has been happening to her, kindly, what have you done to it? If failure to which, that is when you can take now action against it. In terms of, also, you can also go to report to the police. The police, in terms of recording your statement, can also aid us in terms of maybe pushing the prosecution to do like a criminal case against this person, because what they're doing is not supposed to happen. As I mentioned, you're supposed to work in a reasonable and fair working conditions. If the internals are not working, at least when you're coming to us and you're going actually for a criminal offense, there's actually that pattern to show that these are the steps you've taken. And it's actually will even bring light in terms of creating awareness for people to speak out, because internally not so many people get help, as you've actually alluded to us, that you've tried all these channels, there's no one you can talk to. So in terms of also coming out and speaking out to organizations that can come and help you is actually a good solution. So for us, if you can come to us, or we have a toll-free line that you can call directly and we can book you for an appointment and you take the action further, which is 0800 720 501. You can call us directly and we'll help you out with that situation.
Nancy in the crowd has a question for Madam Rachel.
Thank you so much. My name is Nancy. I'm a feminist, and I'm asking Rachel, thank you so much for amplifying your voice for others. And I'm asking for the women with disability and the LGBTQ community. They don't raise their voices like the other women. So what can we do to amplify our voices so that we can speak on their behalf, even if we are not victimized? Because I'm sure they really face this sexual harassment at workplace, but they don't speak about it. My second question goes to Mwavishi, and I'm asking for the casual laborers, especially the house helps. Most of them are women, and we've had cases where even their male bosses have made them pregnant, and they are chased away. They go back to up country. They have nothing to do, and nothing is done. Where can they report such issues, especially in the ward area, like the lowest level? Where can they start? Thank you.
Those are excellent questions. Nancy, we'll start off with Rachel.
First, let me thank you, Nancy, for making this conversation inclusive, because that's why we're talking about speaking up. And Judy Kaberia also spoke about the same thing. What I noticed in the area where I was working, because I had the information, knowledge, and guts to speak out, now other women who felt weak also started speaking out. So that's what I would say in regards to the question you're asking. Once a woman who identifies as LGBTQ, or a man who does, or someone who is differently abled, once they see you speaking out, you give them power to do so as well. So the onus is on us, the ones who are affected, and we have the voice to do so. Let's do so, because there are people who are relying on us to inspire them to do what we are doing. So once you start speaking out, they also speak out. And then with the case that Judy was talking about, this case that the Kenya Sector Media Working Group is looking to use as a deterrent to take forward to the court and follow through with the process. Once we have that one single deterrent case, you will see many other women starting to speak out, irrespective of who they identify as, irrespective of whether they are differently abled or not. Once you have a case and people can see, wow, they used, someone who was taken to court and this, this happened to them, and people are Kenya is taking this thing seriously. You will see people starting to speak out. It won't matter what part of the society you belong to, people will start speaking out. So what I would say is, let's not get tired. Let's not get tired. Let's keep these conversations going. I know they keep on saying, you're making so much noise, kelele, mambo ya wa mama, but they will give us labels. You will be labeled this, you will be labeled that. Don't let it speak out, because they talk to you like that because they're afraid. Let's instill that fear. For us to stop this thing, let's speak out and instill that fear. Thank you.
That's powerful stuff right there, Rachel. Even us on Dadas, we are not afraid, and we will keep pursuing this matter until we actually get some action and justice for the victims and punishment for the perpetrators. That was a two-part question.
Thank you for your question. The first thing that we normally advocate for is reports. But of course, the circumstances are not that direct, that if your boss harasses you, you just walk into a police station and report. So what we normally do is we normally carry out things like trainings for people who are within the ground. We also undertake in terms of creating awareness, because as it has been mentioned, not so many people know what sexual harassment is. For example, if your boss does something and then compliments you, either maybe telling you that if you do this, I'm going to give you this in return, a benefit in return, then you're stuck in between on how you address this issue. So the first thing that you normally advocate is for you to report. You can even tell someone, they can even report it on your behalf for us to take place. For us as FIDA, what we normally do is, like I mentioned earlier, we have a toll-free line. Once you call, we listen to you. We can even book you for an appointment, and you can take action in terms of also helping you to report to the police for action to be taken.
Our next question is from Sylvia, and it's for Judy and for Ms. Movishi. Sylvia?
Yes, thank you so much for the opportunity. And to the panelists, thank you for the insightful information and the discussion. My concern is mostly to the house managers and mama fuas. I know at some point we might forget the women and the girls. So I'm just bringing this to this attention. Most of them, they actually experience sexual harassment, both from our Kenyan men and foreigners. And if you just work with these women and see how they are actually struggling to put food on their tables, it is really hard for them. And most of them have to compromise. They can't speak to anyone. They can't even attend some of the forums because they are living under $1. And my concern is just to know, where do we place these women? Because I know when it comes to discussion, we always discuss about career women, and we forget this group because they are also working. Though they are not in any organization or any union, but at the end of the day, they are working. And it is very frustrating and humiliating, especially for them. And even to some of them, they actually go through the same situation with their girls. So it is actually becoming even worse. So as women, I wanted to know, where do we place these women, and what plans, what can we even do for them also to feel inclusive, and also they are just women like any other woman. Yeah.
The first thing that we need to address, and we really need to hit the hammer on it, is awareness of your rights. If your rights have been violated, how do you address it? Yes, there's the government option of going to the police, of going to this office. There are other organizations like civil societies like FIDA, other organizations who are doing work in terms of defending your rights if have been violated. So the first thing I can address is just to create that awareness, sensitize people, and you, through this forum, if you see a domestic worker is going through what you think is not right, try to educate them that yes, if this is happening to you, you can report. It doesn't matter if you lose your job or something happens to you, but because at the end of it, for you to get success, losses have to be made. So for me, what I'd best advise is create awareness, sensitize them on what they're supposed to do, which office they're supposed to visit, whom they can tell, and how it can be responded. But for us, FIDA, we are welcoming them to come. We can assist them based on their case-to-case. Thanks.
My question goes to Mwangeshi. Reactions that the victims get from the police. It seems that even the police themselves haven't gotten the civic education they need to. In amongst themselves, they think sexual harassment is only for children. I mean, when you go there to report that maybe I'm talking this from experience, when you go there to report have been sexual harassed, the first question they will ask, how old are you? And some questions will follow, which are like stories within stories. I mean, you have been sexual harassed, and when you are going to report, you are still being sexual harassed. So to Mwangeshi, what are the plannings ahead to make sure that even the police or in the police stations, they have the civic education on what is really sexual harassment and who can be affected? Concern, as Kaberia has put it, poverty is one of the sources of sexual harassment. At times back, some years ago, while in school, I had issues with my health and even the fee problems. And therefore, my uncle happened to be paying my school fees. And there's these things he used to give me. I thought, okay, he's my relative and he has to give me because that is my right as a child. But I didn't know at the end I will end up being sexual harassed. And the reactions from the parents. For example, when under 18 child raised a concern to the parent or to the mother, as I did, mother will be like, no, but this person is paying your school fees. How do you know? I mean, she won't take it serious as to what I'm telling or maybe the child is saying. So what are the approaches that even the children in school who are going through what I went through and I didn't speak, because when I told my mom, she was like, oh, this person is taking care of you, he's taking care of your school fees, of your health, and therefore I have nothing else I can do. What are the approaches we can use, maybe for the children, and even for some of us?
Yes, I do understand it is a bit of a challenge because you see, from where we sit, most of these issues, it needs a lot of sensitization and awareness of actually what you're dealing with. For example, the case of the police. Most of the time of our clients, they come to report to us that yes, if violence has been meted on me or inflicted on me, I went to report to the police and this is the response I was given. I expected that if I go to report to the police, they'll take action, take your statement, maybe forward the case to the prosecution and the matter goes to court, but that's not what happened. So what we normally do as FIDA, we offer training to police officers in terms of if someone comes with a sexual violence related case, how do you handle it? Of course, there's a sensitivity part that you have to handle. Most police stations, they have that gender desk. In terms of reporting, when you go in to report that it's a sexual related crime, you're not treated as if you're going to report that someone has stolen your chicken, someone has stolen your car and all that. So in terms of implementing that, those are some of the steps as FIDA we do capacity building in terms of holding trainings and workshops, inviting certain stakeholders that have a role to play in curbing these vices, by giving them training, by holding seminars and giving them just an approach on how to handle these issues. Because most people, even in schools, you attend to counselors, teachers on how to identify if a student is not well in school. How do you pick out that student to try and find out if things are not okay at home? Because as you say, most of these things happened at home. In terms of also defilement, it happens at home, and you find the person who's doing the act is either the father, the uncle, someone who's trying to, who's the breadwinner in the family. So it becomes a bit difficult in terms of action taken. So as us, in terms of fighting this scab, we try at least to give you that that platform to identify such issues and how do you approach them. If it's a child, do you report to the head teacher? If the head teacher is not working, how do you engage the police to come and investigate? In terms of police being what I just mentioned, just give them that capacity building, create awareness on how to handle, and if new information comes, because this one, in terms of sexual violence cases, we have to have the human rights approach based to it, which most of the schools, I don't think that they have that, that curriculum in terms of giving human rights based approach when you're dealing with such situations. So for us, that is the kind of services that we do in terms of empowering officers and empowering key stakeholders that play a role in terms of curbing this vice. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mwavishi. I want to thank you. I want to Judy and Rachel for taking time out of your busy schedules to have a sit down with me and actually explore matters sexual harassment. My main takeaway today is sensitization and awareness will go a long way in curbing sexual harassment. The second thing is report. Once you are aware, once you've educated yourself, go out of your way and find out if whatever treatment or whatever action you're getting qualifies as sexual harassment. So educate yourself, educate people around you. Employers, create and sensitize your environments and your employees so that such cases cannot be reported. Our social media platforms is where you can reach us at Dada's KBC. We are always willing and ready to interact with you in spite of whatever issue that you may have. So we're looking forward to your comment, your feedback, and anything you may have to share about our broadcasting and any of the themes that we have to discuss. On behalf of KBC, our sponsor journalist for human rights, and myself, Ashiko Mbune, and our reliable and efficient partners, Boma Hotel, I wish you all a lovely week. I'll see you same time, same place next week on Dada's. Goodbye.